Hello and welcome back with yet another tutorial on media laws. Today we'll be discussing about Newspaper Price and Pages Act of 1956. I'm Susheta Sengupta Roy from Swami Vivekananda Institute of Modern Science, Department of Media Science. Now, we all are quite acquainted with the word newspaper, but all the newspapers certainly has similar prices or the similar rate tags. So this comes under the Act, which is the Newspaper Price and Pages Act of 1956. What exactly does it say? Now, as per the Act, Newspaper Price and Pages Act of 1956 is an act to provide for the regulation of the prices charged for the newspapers in relations to their pages and of matters connected therewith for the purpose of preventing unfair competition among newspapers so that the newspapers may have fuller opportunities of freedom of expression. So, if a newspaper is comprises of 20 pages, will have a different price, and a similar newspaper with maybe 5 pages will obviously will be in a cheaper rate. Now, what are the silent features of this act? Now, when we talk about this act, the features of the act are for the purpose of securing the availability of newspaper, the government may, by an order published in the official gazette, determine the maximum price of newspaper to be charged under Section 3 of this Act. That means even if a newspaper is that has around 200 pages, there is a certain price to the newspaper which is fixed by the government, which the newspaper, the publisher will not be exceeding on, which comes under Section 3 of this Act. So the maximum price determined shall not be less than the basic price of the newspaper. Similarly, even if the newspaper is 5 pages, still it cannot go lower than the minimum price which has been determined. So no order shall be made in respect of newspapers sold at a price exceeding the basic price. So prices of newspaper may vary in respect of different newspapers. It will vary from one newspaper to the other. So, Newspaper Price and Pages Act, this is an act to provide for the regulation of the prices charged for newspapers in relationship to their pages. So, the purpose of this act to prevent unfair competition among the newspapers, so that newspaper may have fuller opportunity of freedom of expression. The act defines daily newspapers as a newspaper which is published not less than 6 days in a week and includes any these weekly papers will not be obviously added to this option. So it has to be at least published at least 6 days a week and includes any supplement or special edition of such newspaper. This act defines newspaper as any printed periodical work containing public news or comments or public news appearing in intervals of not more than a week. If somebody publishes news which is 6 months back or maybe 10 years back, that won't be a newspaper. That can be article, that can be a journal, but not newspaper. Now, Newspaper Price and Pages Act, again, it continued. It says that, to add up with the previous one, the central government has the power to regulate prices and pages of newspaper, etc. The central government, for the purpose of preventing unfair competition among the newspaper, may from time to time, by notification in the official gazette, make an order providing for the regulation of the prices charged for newspapers. So the prices is fixed in relating to their maximum or minimum number of pages. So before making any order under this section, the central government shall consult associations of publishers and such publishers likely to be affected by the order as it may think fit, which respects to the action proposed to be taken. Now, returns be furnished by newspaper. So the press registrar appointed under the Press and the Registration of Books Act of 1867 may from time to time direct the publisher of any newspaper to furnish to him weekly returns and statistics with respect to the flow of advertisement and other matters concerned with the normal working of the newspaper. So the publisher of every newspaper shall comply with such directions. So if the publisher of any newspaper, in the sense, what does it mean? Refuses or neglects to comply with any directions of the press registrar, or what else? Furnishes or causes to be furnished to the press registrar any weekly return or statistics which are false shall be punishable with fine which may extend to 500 rupees. It will, if somebody doesn't abide by the rules and regulations of the Newspaper Price and Pages Act of 1956, specifically if the materials published or furnishes causes the press registrar, it causes any statistically, if it is false. Whatever has to be published has to be true at the best of their knowledge. Now, Newspaper Price and Control Act further says that if the owner of the newspaper is aggrieved of any such order by the government, he can apply to the for the revision within 30 days of the publication of such notification, stating that the reason of for which he thinks the revision is necessary. So if suppose the publisher thinks that some regulation has been made or which he cannot abide by or such are not fair, or what he published was not false but absolutely true, in that case he can obviously apply for the revision within 30 days, not apart from 30 days. It has to be, whatever has to be furnished has to be within 30 days. So the owner or the publisher of the newspaper is bound to return a report, which the central government may consider necessary for carrying out the act. Now further, no newspaper shall be sold in territories to which this act extends in contravention or an order made under section 3. So a newspaper cannot be circulated to a territory where our Indian guidelines are not being followed as per under section 3. So whosoever sells a newspaper in contravention of section 3 of this act shall be punished with a fine. So whatever section 3 is say, like if somebody sells it out of the territory of the like of the territory of law, then that case it will be fined. You will have to face a fine. Now, in this act, unless the context otherwise requires, a daily newspaper means a newspaper which is published for not less than 6 days in a week and includes a supplement of special edition of such newspaper. So newspaper means any printed periodical work containing public news and comments on public news appearing at intervals of not more than a week. So what is a newspaper? 3 things important. 1, not less than 6 weeks. So it has to be published for at least 6 weeks. It should be 7 days a week, but at least 6 days a week. It should include a special supplementary of such newspaper, and that one, like the most important part for a periodical to be a newspaper, it has to contain public news and comments on public news appearing for an interview or not more than a week. So that's the most important part, or the most important requisites to be a newspaper. Now, what does section 3? We have been talking about section 3. So what does section 3 subsection 1 say? So if the central government is of opinion that for the purpose of preventing unfair competition among newspapers, so that newspapers generally, in particular newspapers with smaller resources and those published in Indian languages, may have fuller opportunities of freedom of expression, it is necessary or expedient so to do, the central government may from time to time by notification in the official gazette make an order providing for the regulation of prices charged for the newspaper in relation to their maximum or minimum number of pages. Maximum number of pages, this is the price. Minimum number of pages, at least this is the price, but cannot go more than this. So it will be basically binded by the central government through an official gazette. So sizes or areas and for the space to be allotted for a present matter in relation to other matters therein. Everything will be pre-settled by the official gazette by the central government, obviously. Now, section 2 of the same act says an order under this section what may be made in relation to newspaper generally or in relation to any class of newspaper. B may contain different provisions for daily newspaper and newspaper appearing at other periodical intervals, and for different classes of newspaper, and may in particular make separate provisions for weekly editions or daily newspaper, so whether appearing under the same title or not, and also for supplements or special editions of newspapers issued on special occasions. This is basically defined under Section 3 of the Newspaper Price and Pages Act of 1956. Now, under this section, the third part or the third clause, the third section, the Section 2, subsection 3 says an order under this section shall be made with due regards to the need for reasonable flexibility with reference to all the fall of news, the flow of advertisements, and other matters concerned with the normal working of the newspaper. So, a newspaper containing no public news, only advertisements, cannot be deemed as a newspaper. Similarly, so it has to be specific rules and regulations formulated beforehand. Now, Section 2, subsection 4a. Before making any order under this section, the central government shall consult associations of publishers and such publishers likely to be affected by the order. Section 4 says, no newspaper shall be published or sold in territories in which this act extends in contravention of any of the provisions of the order made under Section 3. So, suppose Section 3 says that these are the rules of having a newspaper in India. Now, maybe some other state or some other country, maybe Bhutan, maybe Burma, maybe Bangladesh, maybe Sri Lanka, maybe any other country who are in contravention with these rules. So that is a territory where this newspaper cannot be circulated. So that we have already spoken about this in under Section 4 before. So the same thing, let's just repeat it out here. Now, Section 5 says, for the purpose of verifying whether an order made under Section 3 is being compiled with or not, the press registrar appointed under the Press and Registration of Books Act of 1867 may from time to time direct the publisher of any newspaper to which such an order applies to furnish to him such weekly returns and statistics with respect to any of the particulars referred to in Section 3, and the publisher for every newspaper shall comply with such directions. Now, Section 6, subsection 1 says, if any newspaper is published or sold in contravention of Section 4, that means Section 4 said about the territorial guidelines. So, and now Section 6.1 says that if in case somebody, anybody circulates a newspaper not abiding by the territorial guidelines which is there in Section 4, the publisher of the newspaper shall be on the first conviction to be punishment with fine which extends up to 1,000 rupees, and on second or consequent conviction with fine which may exceed to 2,000. Section 6, subsection 2 says, if the publisher of any newspaper refuses to neglect to comply with any directions of the press registrar given under Section 5, or furnishes or causes to be furnished to the press registrar may weekly return or statistics which he has reasons to believe to be false, he should be punishable by the fine that may extend up to 500. Now, we have already said, guys, I have already learned before that whatever news, public news are being published has to be right, has to be absolutely perfect. Any fake news caught will be fined. So, Section 7 of the same Act says that no court shall take cognizance of any offence punishable under this Act except upon the complaint in writing by the press registrar appointed under the Press and the Registration of Books Act of 1967. So, what we understand is that even if somebody has to be punished, if you have to sue somebody, that has to be only by the press registrar. Anybody and everybody cannot come up with it, and again appointed by the Press and the Registrar of Books Act of 1867. So, the next tutorial we will go to is the Press and the Registration of Books Act of 1867. So, till then, thank you so much. I'll be back with the Press and the Registration of Books Act in my next tutorial. Please stay tuned and stay blessed.